dangerous men in Queens. There's Troy, Homo, and E-Moneybags. Those are the three amigos. Those guys are dangerous.
He was allegedly involved in the Christmas Day gunfight between two gangs at the Sunrise Cinema on Long Island.
You know, I was married to E first cousin. And E and J bumped heads.
He was a rapper, but also a gangster.
Pretty much, yeah.
The Supreme Team was feared with good reason, but there was someone who single-handedly terrorized the industry, back then Eric Moneybags. Moneybags was a menace to the streets and the entire hip-hop industry. He was this fearless, unpredictable force that played by his own rules and made even the most dangerous figures think twice.
Moneybags, tomorrow, baby. Queens in the house, I'm just saying, that's enough. If it ain't rough, it ain't right.
He had confrontations with even the feared names like Supreme McGriff and apparently came out on top. In one instance, he almost killed Supreme, but ended up killing his friend instead.
Seen him sitting in the car, woke up in his car, pulled out, shot the car. Nothing hit Supreme. It hit Black Just. Black Just was still.
This is the story of how one man single-handedly terrorized the industry. Jayz was scared for his life. Moneybags versus Jay-Z in the early 2000s. Tensions in the hip-hop world were at an all-time high, and one of the most intense feuds involved rap mogul Jay-Z and street legend E-Moneybags. The clash, which stemmed from a mix of street affiliations, music industry politics, and personal vendettas, led to one of the rare instances where Jay-Z reportedly feared for his life.
E and J bumped heads. Unfortunately, it got worse.
Now you might be wondering, how did Jay-Z and E-Moneybags cross paths? Well, they were both from Brooklyn, and we even went to the same school together.
Okay, and I guess he went to school with Jay-Z?
Right.
E-Moneybags was from Sunner Projects, and Jay was from Marcy Projects, just a block away. Plus, rapper Sauce Money introduced them. Sauce Money was married to E-Moneybags' first cousin, which deepened their connection. E-Moneybags, running with the Queen scene, had access to DJs like Stretch Armstrong, and DJ Clue J would pass his music to E-Moneybags, hoping to get some play. But the real beef between E-Moneybags and Jay-Z started over Rocore clothing.
Away clothes or whatever. Jay said something, I guess, that he didn't take on to or whatever. He thought he was saying something funny, and that's what it really started.
The beef escalated when Mobb Deep's Prodigy listened to the radio and heard Memphis Bleek's freestyle. One particular line from Beanie Siegel caught his attention. I creep on like Quiet Storm. Prodigy, known for his paranoia and sensitivity to perceived threats, immediately took offense, believing the Rockefeller crew was taking shots at Mobb Deep. He called his associate E-Moneybags to address the situation.
All of a sudden I hear Beanie say, I creep on like a quiet storm. I'm like, hold up.
On top of that, Jay-Z's protege Memphis Bleek introduced a new artist named H-Moneybags on that same radio session to Moneybags. This was blatant disrespect. His name carried weight in the streets, and now someone else was using it, co-signed by Jay-Z himself.
All the H-Moneybags.
Right.
Which E-Moneybags took offense to.
Right. Yeah.
He had some nigga H-Moneybags up there rapping. H-Moneybags. So now go in the studio. So yo, E, come outside real quick. So E go.
Prodigy and E-Moneybags interpreted the freestyle as a sign of disrespect and wasted no time getting in touch with Hot 97. Furious Moneybags wanted to confront Jay-Z immediately but lacked direct access. Instead, he had Prodigy call Hot 97, getting someone to hand the phone to Jay-Z. A heated exchange followed, ending with Jay-Z reportedly hanging up on him. Disrespect that E-Moneybags wasn't about to let slide. Still heated, E-Moneybags called Nas, vowing to handle Jay-Z on site. Nas, trying to mediate, reached out to Jay-Z for clarification. Jayz downplayed the situation, stating he made music for hustlers, not stick-up kids, words that only fueled the fire. When Nas relayed this back to E-Moneybags, it solidified his anger. Not only was Jay-Z allowing someone to use his name, but he was also looking down on him.
When Jay speaks to Nas, he go, yo, man, we don't even make music for like that, man. We only make music for that get money.
Prodigy and E-Moneybags accused Jay-Z of disrespect, while Jay-Z tried to de-escalate the situation. However, E-Moneybags was not one to let things slide, and he took the confrontation as a personal insult. While nothing major happened immediately after the phone call, the situation between Jay-Z and E-Moneybags remained tense. In hip-hop reputation, is everything, and Jay-Z knew that crossing paths with a feared figure like E. Moneybags could have real-world consequences. Although source money was able to help both parties sort out their differences, Jay-Z knew not to get on E. Moneybags' bad side again.
I was able to facilitate a conversation between the both of them that, they was able.
In Moneybags, Big Nose Troy, and their legendary feud with Supreme back in the early 90s, the streets where ruthless hustling was more than a way of life. It was survival in this world. E. Moneybags was a name that demanded respect. The tension started over a car deal. Kenneth Supreme McGriff, a known figure in the streets, was selling tagged cars through a woman named Z. Moneybags put down $1,000 as a deposit for one of these cars.
With Preem, you know what I'm saying? Because Bags was going to buy a car, you know what I'm saying? And Preem.
But at the last minute, he changed his mind. Instead, he wanted to add that money to the $2,500 he had just earned from Prodigy for a track on the Murder Music soundtrack and buy a legit car. When Bags approached Supreme to get his money back, Supreme brushed him off like it was nothing that didn't sit right with Bags, and things escalated quickly.
Him and Supreme got into some sort of, argument over some money, over a car or something like that.
One day outside the Coliseum, Bags caught sight of Supreme and opened fire, but in the chaos, he mistakenly hit and killed Black, just a respected figure in the streets.
So he pulled up on him and shot the car up, and ended up killing Black Just, who was a big...
The streets were looking for revenge, and Bags knew it. He admitted that killing Black Just was a mistake. Supreme was the real target, but he wasn't about to back down from the heat coming his way. At the time, Big Nose Troy had his own issues with Supreme. So when he and E. Moneybags linked up, they made it clear if you were affiliated with Supreme, you were a target. It didn't matter if you were a street soldier or a rapper, no exceptions. One of their most infamous moves, running down on Irv Gotti and Ja Rule, they stormed the studio, roughed them up, and walked out with their jewelry. According to Prodigy's book, a Murder Inc. member, Cadillac Ta, may have helped set them up by leaking their studio location, but Ta denied the allegations, saying he had no connection with E. Moneybags. Only Big Nose Troy, regardless of how it happened. Irv Gotti made one thing clear: he would never trust Cadillac Ta again. The war with Supreme came at a cost. Word on the streets was that Supreme put out a $50,000 hit on both E. Moneybags and Big Nose Troy. E. Moneybags was the first to go on July 16, 2001 at 9:45 p.m. outside of his house. During a barbecue, 4 gunmen ambushed Bags while he sat in his Lincoln Navigator smoking. They unleashed a barrage of more than 40 bullets, striking him over 10 times.
Later, E. Moneybags gets killed himself.
Right.
Which, I don't know the story, but, you could just assume that it was a retaliation.
To make matters worse, the hit was reportedly recorded for Supreme to watch. Moneybags died on the spot, a gun still in his hand.
And she's got this camera pointed out the window in front of Stretch's old house, Madge's house, filming it. And then just as they start to pull up, she gets scared and she drops to the ground.
3 months later, Big Nose Troy met the same fate.
And even though they killed E, there were still people out there that they couldn't be comfortable because, these guys were serious people that wasn't just gonna let that.
These murders, along with other criminal activities, eventually led to Supreme's downfall. In 2002, authorities tied Supreme to drug racketeering. Then in 2005, the feds hit him with murder for hire charges, explicitly linking him to the 2001 killings of E. Moneybags and Troy Singleton, another rival. The evidence included wiretaps, witness testimonies, and financial records. Tracing payments for the murders in 2007, Supreme was convicted of racketeering, conspiracy, and murder for hire, and was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Today, he's serving time for multiple charges. To understand the violent legacy of E. Moneybags, we must go back to December 25, 1990, a night meant for celebration that instead became a deadly turning point in his life as families gathered for Christmas. A tragic shootout erupted at the Sunrise Multiplex in Valley Stream, New York, during the highly anticipated premiere of The Godfather Part 3, which should have been a night of cinematic entertainment, turned into a real-life gangster saga that would leave blood on the theater floor and fear in the hearts of moviegoers.
Everyone, I'm Brenda Blackman, sitting in for Jennifer Valapi. There has been an arrest in a Godfather 3 theater shootout.
Shootings left 3 people wounded and a 15-year-old boy.
At the center of the mayhem was E. Moneybags, a rising figure in the streets, reportedly affiliated with the Young Guns, a gang locked in a bitter rivalry with another crew. The Lost Boys tensions had been brewing for some time, and that night a simple dispute over noise levels in the crowded theater escalated into a deadly confrontation. According to reports, what started as a verbal altercation between the Young Guns and Lost Boys quickly spiraled out of control. Words were exchanged, threats were made, and in the blink of an eye, the dispute turned into gunfire. Between 12 and 25 shots rang out inside the dark theater, sending 600 panicked moviegoers scrambling for their lives. When the chaos subsided, 4 people were wounded, and one innocent bystander, 15-year-old Tumning Hall, lay fatally shot. Authorities swiftly launched an investigation, and soon 4 individuals were indicted in connection with the shooting. Lawrence Bartley, Michael Bennett, and Bernardus Hilton were among those facing charges, though speculation suggested that E. Moneybags may have fired one of the deadly shots. No concrete evidence ever directly linked him to Hall's death. However, the damage had been done. His reputation as a feared enforcer had been cemented. While the court of law may not have officially tied E. Moneybags to the murder, the streets told a different story. His involvement in one of the most infamous shootings in New York's history only added to his growing notoriety for authorities. This incident placed him firmly in their crosshairs, and as the years went on, he remained a person of interest in various criminal investigations as the 1990s progressed. Moneybags' reputation in the underworld continued to rise. He became known as a street enforcer and a formidable figure connected to some of the most feared individuals in the hip-hop and criminal worlds, including ties to the infamous Supreme Team. Over 3 decades later, the Sunrise Multiplex shooting remains one of the most notorious theater shootings in U.S. history. What should have been a night to enjoy a film about the fictional world of crime and betrayal instead turned into a real-life tragedy that solidified E. Moneybags' legacy as a feared and controversial figure in the streets. When asked about E. Moneybags' prodigy recalled their connection through mutual friend. He explained that he met Bags through Shami, a childhood friend from Lafra. Bags became a familiar face in Queensbridge, forming close bonds with Prodigy and Nas.
Me and Shami moved to left right around the same time.
Prodigy remembered how Bags was a huge supporter of his music, always showing love and respect. But as time passed, tensions arose. One incident involved a confrontation between E. Moneybags and Jay-Z over a rapper using a name similar to his. Another escalated when Bags sought to reclaim money from a deal gone wrong, leading to violence and retaliation. Tragically, Prodigy recounted the moment he called Bags one morning only to have the police answer the phone. That was the day Bags was murdered, a moment that left Prodigy shaken. In his words, "They took my..."
Hey, I got up early in the morning, called them, and the police picked up the phone. You know what I'm saying? It was like, yo, you hear about what happened? I'm like, oh, you know what I'm saying? So, after that,
E. Moneybags was a known figure in the streets of Springfield, Queens, alongside a crew of young hustlers. They called themselves the Young Guns, a name not just for show, but for the arsenal they kept on deck. These weren't just kids trying to get by, they were about their business, moving weight, stacking paper, and making a name for themselves. Moneybags was heavily involved in this crew, engaging in activities that kept him on the radar of both rival gangs and law enforcement.
This is in the midst of that the Young Guns made a name for themselves. You know, so we gotta let the people know that as well. Like, when you hear about all your stories about your guys from the South Side Jamaica.
Live Squad was a rap group led by Randy Stretchwalker, who was closely linked to Tupac Shakur. Moneybags, who was also Stretch's associate, found themselves drawn to Pac and moved in similar circles. But while Pac was an artist, Stretch and Moneybags were street figures. First, the connection was complex. Some saw Pac as just another rapper trying to fit in, while others respected the way he carried himself. Though known for their music, Live Squad had deep connections to street activities, including druging and violence. Their gritty crime-infused lyrics reflected their real-life experiences in Queens, New York. After Stretch's murder in 1995, the group's influence waned, but its legacy remained tied to the East Coast hip-hop scene and its turbulent gang affiliations.
Well, man, you know, everybody know us from what we rep, man. It ain't a big secret, man. We from Springfield and 111. Don't know where that's at, man? That's on the north side of Jamaica, Queens. Me and my brother, God bless the dead, man, Big Stretch, was repping that music thing with this Live Squad. Before Live Squad, we was on the block, 111, 112, all the way down.
Originally from Sumner Projects in Brooklyn, Eric Smith, better known on the streets As E Moneybags moved to Frac City, Queens, in the early 90s to live with his grandmother, he quickly adapted to the Queen street life and built a reputation that spread fast. His name was ringing out even more than some of the guys who had already been making moves in Queensy. Moneybags gained the respect of serious players, dudes getting money, putting in work, and running the streets in Lafrock. He crossed paths with rappers like Capone and Noriega, who had history with him during the 90s. Many Lafrock dudes were tight with those from Queensbridge, a neighborhood that was home to heavyweights like Nas and Mobb Deep. Pub was on fire at the time thanks to these artists. Moneybags was a known street figure, a stick-up kid and gangster. If you had it, he was coming for it. That's the kind of time he was on. Being around Ulfrac and seeing Capone and Noriega's success, E Moneybags started hanging out with the Queensbridge rap scene. He was watching Mobb Deep, Nas, and Infamous Mob. Guys who had come from the streets and made serious money in the rap game, seeing their lifestyle, the cars, jewelry, and checks. He figured if anybody should be rapping about this street life, it should be me, so he started freestyling. Before long, he rapped alongside Nas, Mobb Deep, and other major Queens rappers. He didn't get respect just because of his music. He was a real dude in the streets, and that gave his words weight. Soon it wasn't just the streets that knew Moneybags. Industry execs and big names in the rap game started paying attention. Having connections with top rappers gave him an opening into the industry, but at the same time he was still deeply involved in street life, which made balancing the two a challenge. Moneybags' story is a cautionary tale about the intersection of street life and the rap industry. He was respected in both worlds, but in the end the streets caught up to him. His legacy, however, still lives on in the streets and in hip-hop history.